Hi everyone, I'm Daniel and welcome to Just One Truth. In this video, I'm going to use the keys that I've been outlining and we're going to decode the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas is a collection of verses that are attributed to Jesus, and they came about from a collection of works that is currently called the Nag Hammadi library. And even though it is included with the Gnostic works, it is not considered a Gnostic book. There's actually in this collection, the Nag Hammadi, it's called that because it was found near the town of Nag Hammadi in northern Egypt, number one. And number two, it was a collection of not just Gnostic scriptures, but other works as well. There was the Hermetica, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. Additionally, there were some examples in there of Plato's Republic, some works from Plato. And so we see that calling it a Gnostic library is not exactly right. The Nag Hammadi, that would be like saying you found a bunch of books outside of Chicago and you called it the Chicago Library when it has a bunch of different things in it. So yes, the Nag Hammadi contains Gnostic scriptures, but it contains other things as well. And the Gospel of Thomas fits that category. It more closely resembles what Jesus said. In fact, the verses, many of them are direct correlations, very similar verbiage to what you find in the Bible from Jesus, from the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain, and other teachings. It is, however, as in the Gospel of Thomas, is a lot more extensive. There's more in there than what you find in the Bible. Of course, my contention is, if you've been watching the videos, is that there's one spiritual teaching. There's one thing in the universe, in humanity, that is an underlying teaching, and that underlying teaching has been discovered, but it was encoded in teaching processes that are complicated, and that with certain keys you can unlock them. And whether you're reading the Tao or Buddha's Dhammapada or Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, that you will get the same lesson out of there if you use these keys. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm just going to use the keys and we're going to look at these teachings and see how they work. I'm going to briefly identify the keys again before we get started. And as we're into it, I'll describe a little bit more, but I'm not going to spend 20 minutes this time trying to set this up. First of all, that it's a spiritual teaching. It's a teaching about the person. It's a teaching about the individual. It can be a very difficult teaching because you have to look inward. You have to look at yourself. You have to look at the state of your own thinking, your experiences, your life, and make adjustments with that typically. And that's something that a lot of people are not going to do. And that's the reason why it's nested and encoded in a way like this. It allows the teacher to get their lesson encapsulated in something that's going to enjoy the widest possible dissemination in the public. I want to show you a very quick example of what this looks like as far as turning it inward. Here's an example, and I'm going to make up this verse right here. Let's say we have a spiritual verse and it's just let go. One verse by itself, and it's in a body of work, so we know it's a spiritual work. Somebody might look at that and they're looking at it outwardly, which means they're looking at it literally. They're looking at it as if it means something about the physical world, and they could look at you perhaps when you tell them you need to let go, and they can tell you, I'm not holding on to anything. Look, my hands are empty. Okay, that's obviously the most shallow surface layer of understanding it. We're all farther along than that. We all know that, if somebody's harping and harping and harping on something and you're just tired of hearing it, you might tell them, let it go. And everybody knows that means to let go of what you're hanging on to mentally. That's as easy as it gets as far as an example of turning it inward. It's a metaphoric verse that doesn't mean something literal. It means something inward. It means something spiritual. It's also about your own self-improvement. And the ancient people didn't know what a brain was. They didn't know how the mind worked. We've only learned that in the last hundreds of years. We've kind of understood that the brain is the thinking center, and only in more recent times do we understand the complexity of it. But they did understand that there were things happening in the human in the background, that as a person is functioning and talking to somebody, they're still performing, they're still doing things. We know that today is because of the subconscious mind is in the background taking care of business, observing things that we may not be consciously aware of, but all these things are happening. They saw that, and my contention is that they called that the soul. And the reason I say that is because if we use that process as we're reading the verse, and whenever it's something about healing the soul or healing the heart, really what they're talking about is the things that we hold in our mind that have to be changed. If we're hurt over something, it's not because our heart is damaged from somebody that hurt you. It's because the way you hold it in your mind. So to heal your heart, you're really healing a thought process. You can't go in and put a Band-Aid on a bruise on your heart. You have to change the way you think. So as we go through this and we work through the processes, it's about our subconscious mind, and it's very personal. We treat them that way. And as we go along, we'll see how that unfolds. Also, that many component parts of these verses are metaphoric representations of who we are. If there's a verse about a garden and things growing in your garden, that's your mind and the things that grow in your mind. If there are verses about monsters or demons or anything like that, those are the things that we harbor inside of us that hurt us, that we want to ignore. We want to put them away. We don't want to deal with them, but they act out. Those are demons. Those are weeds in our garden. Those are metaphorically things that we would look at and think those are kind of derogatory. But that, again, that's how the verses work, and that's how they decode. Okay, let's get started right on it. Okay, and I'm going to caveat everything that I'm about to say with the realization that this is theoretical. A lot of people have interpreted this, and a lot of people, as I've read those interpretations, still have that outward looking kind of a religious view. They haven't turned it inwards. Everybody thinks they're right, including me. My strongest argument, I suppose, would be that if you use this process for any of the world teachings, they all decode in the same way. So instead of looking at any particular teaching and saying, this one is right above all of the others, I'm saying, oh, wait a minute, all of them on the outside are different, but on the inside, they're all the same. That's the difference. And lastly, I have no ability to remember how many hundreds or thousands of hours I have applied to this and looked at things and decoded verse. And you can look at Lao Tzu and find incredible consistency in his teaching. The Buddha, the same way. Hinduism, the same way. When you get to Jesus, you find a lot of conflict. You find different teachings from different places that have been combined, like the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, or his birth story in two different locations, and they're not the same. And what I realize, or at least what I speculate, when Buddha or Lao Tzu taught, there was no competition. There was nobody that cared to shut that down. Whatever they had to say got passed along, it got written down, and there really isn't any conflict. There's not a bunch of different verses that say different things that you're supposed to try to find some way to reconcile. With Jesus, boy, do we find that. What I've come to realize is that because of the nature of the life of the people at that time, where they were, Roman occupation, conflict with just, I don't even want to get into it all. The point is this, that there is quite possibly things that are written in Jesus's work that are not right, that were put in by scribes or taken out, or things have been modified. People tried to get rid of it, tried to shut it down. I question the writings of Jesus more than anybody else from the masters from antiquity. Just because sometimes you look at things and go, wow, it doesn't blend. I'm going to do the same thing in this. As we go through and decode things, there's times you get to a verse and go, I don't get this one. I don't understand it. And of course, all the teachings can be that way. There's a lot of obscurity, and boy, we live thousands of years after the time that they lived. So we have a difficult time wrapping our brains around what life was like for them at that time and what they were experiencing and what they might have been dealing with. They might have written verses that had to do with an occupation at the time that we have a difficult time relating to. So anyway, as we move along and that happens, I'll mention those verses. I'll set them off to the side. I'm not going to force them to fit. Sometimes I don't understand what an internal spiritual meaning is. Sometimes there may not be one. Sometimes they are simply rules for the community, how to live your life, how to properly eat a diet or whatever the case may be. Things that were important to them that we may not see the need for right now. We'll identify that as we go. Okay, that having been said, let's begin. This one starts out by saying, "These are the hidden words that the living Jesus spoke, and that Didymus Judas Thomas wrote them down." Okay, what I find interesting here is the term living Jesus. Sounds like somebody was actually alive. You know, that is a term in the spiritual realm and the teaching that means that the verse is a living verse. And what that means is that it is about you, the living person. Living Jesus, you can almost call that the verse itself, the teaching. Almost like if you could say, well, the Tao Te Ching was taught by the living Lao Tzu. And Lao Tzu may not have existed, but the verse is living. The verse is something that becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your life. So it's a living verse. And now, what's important here is Didymus Judas Thomas. Okay, the name Thomas is Aramaic, and Didymos is Greek. And in those two languages, Thomas in Aramaic means twin, and Didymos in Greek means twin. Well, that's kind of strange here that you would have a name that's twin. The way I view this is that whoever had access to this information was a spiritual twin. At least that's the idea. I would look at it and say that actually whoever wrote the Tao Te Ching, whoever wrote the Dhammapada, whoever wrote the Bhagavad Gita, all of these people had access to something, and they all had this secret knowledge, and they encoded it in a certain way, but they were all the same as each other. That's what I would call the twin. I don't see that Jesus Christ was born, that Mary and Joseph had a bunch of kids, and that Jesus had a twin brother who knew everything that he knew. That actually sounds pretty far-fetched. The idea that they were the same spiritual kind of people, the same way that the Buddha and the Dalai Lama would be the same type of person, makes sense. That doesn't matter. That's not a personal teaching. Let's move on to the first verse, number 1. And he said, "Whoever finds the meaning of these words will not taste death." Boy, that sounds fun, doesn't it? Do you think anybody throughout history has found the meaning of these words and are still alive today? They must be like hiding in some underground secret cave with a group of other people that have found this secret teaching, and they're living in ways that they have to hide from us because nobody can know it. Yeah, I don't believe that either. So obviously death is, what does that mean? In metaphorical spiritual teachings, there resides this concept, this idea that when you're born, you're pure. As you grow, you begin to learn things. And as you learn things, you go from one person to become two people. And what that means is that your conscious and your subconscious may not be the same anymore. Often they are, but we're talking about those instances where people learn things that are not accurate. They think they're accurate, but they're hurtful, they're hateful, or they've been abused, or in some way, shape, or form, there's a part of their consciousness that is happy that they're what they want, but there's another part of them that is their subconscious. It's their experiences, their remembered experiences, the stuff that is stored in their gray matter that they don't deal with, but that exist under some pretty hurtful terms. And they act out, or they cause you to feel pain. They cause you to feel hurt. And you don't want to feel that way. So now you can see the relationship of being two people. There's a part of you that wants one thing. There's another part of you that at times experiences something different. And the conscious isn't always in charge of that. These other things are happening. The idea of death is to realize that that part of you that is your subconscious, your experiences that you accumulate, that are identifying who and what you are when you're not paying attention to it and you're not aware of it, that you need to die to that. You need to die to yourself. And it's metaphorical, okay? You're not literally dying. What you're doing is saying, I want this part of me that has been growing and accumulating and has becoming a part of me. I want that part dead. I want it gone. I want it to cease to exist. That's it. Not taste death means you're happy. Nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within. Other states of being that are very happy, very joyful, very peaceful, very comforting. That part of you doesn't act out anymore because that part of you isn't there anymore. Okay, next verse. Jesus says, the one who seeks should not stop seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be dismayed. And when he is dismayed, he will be astonished. And he will be king over the all. All right, let's take a look at that one. First of all, there's a number of components in there. Don't stop seeking until you find. In my experience, there are people that are looking for answers and they're going to keep looking. And whenever they find something that seems satisfactory to them, if they stop there and say, I'm going to believe in this, they're not the kind of seeker that is being referred to in these teachings. To me, the seeker that I have come to recognize is somebody who says, I don't want to settle on any of these and say that this is the right one and it's the only right one. And I don't think that that's for everybody. I really don't. That my experience is that there are people that are done seeking. They're not going to look. They are convinced they're right. And they're waiting for a life afterwards. That's not the kind of seeking that's being referred to here. This is seek until you find. You just keep going. You never stop. You always stay open-minded. But you're eventually going to find something. And when you do, you might find what I've got here. And if that's the case, you're going to be dismayed because what do you find out? Oh, it's not about living forever. It's not about being in heaven for eternity or not coming back, being reborn, re-experiencing life. And people want that to be the case. They want to live forever. And I don't think that that's going to happen. So you find that out, you're going to be dismayed. But when you're dismayed, you'll be astonished. Boy, that doesn't sound very astonishing here. Other than it's a realization that, boy, you have to stop worrying about all that stuff and live now. Live in the moment. Live here. Live now. Enjoy the life that you have, the one life you have. Buddha said something about when people understand that they're not going to be here forever, they become peaceful. And we can kind of see that in the world. When people think that there's something beyond here, they're a lot more willing, I think, to not be peaceful people. Why would they have to? Because as far as they're concerned, there's something beyond here anyway. They're moving on because they're following the rules as they interpret them to be. When you realize that that's not the case, that's astonishing. And then you will be king over the all. That's not a literal king. You're not in charge of humans. You don't want to be in charge. You step away from that and go, oh, that's a whole mess of people out there that are fighting and arguing and saying I'm right. And you're wrong, and you don't want to be a part of that. You step back from that, and then you're in charge of your life. You rule over the all, but that's not all humans. That's all your life. You are the king of your life. Next verse. Jesus says, if those who lead you say to you, look, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fishes will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you and outside of you. And when you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not come to know yourselves, then you exist in poverty, and you are that poverty. Pretty straightforward here. I don't think there's a lot to decode in this one. What is being said is that this kingdom of God is not out there in space like some people think, or in the ocean, or anywhere else that you can't see. That indeed, the kingdom is inside of you and outside of you. That he's telling us that, or the teaching rather, is telling us that what we're looking for is here. It's now. We're existing within it. And as long as we're waiting for it to come about, you're not going to find it. It's here. It's now. Figure it out. How do you do that? When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. When you know yourself, you've come to the realization that your life unfolds based on who and what you are, what you have become, what you believe, what you perceive, and how you interface with life. I know from my own experience, there were many years in my life where I thought, those people and those things and those situations are all happening, and that is what is causing my life to be this way. I didn't know myself. And you live looking outward, believing that life comes to you from outside. And certainly life is coming from outside, but those are the manifestations, the physical manifestations of everybody's inner experience. You have your own inner experience just like all of them do. And once you realize that, you can step back and go, oh, they're going to continue to have their inner experiences. If I don't want to be a participant in what they've got going on, I have to change my inner experience. I can't change what that is, but I can change this is, which then does change my own experience. You step back from those situations. You tend to leave relationships that are hurtful, that are not healthy for you, that are toxic, that are people that take from you or use you or abuse you. At some point in time, you fit where you are. And if it's not good and you realize that and you begin to change yourself, you don't fit there anymore. You will move away. You will step back from that. The children of the living Father. The living Father, I'm going to say, is just the balance of good versus evil, with the living Father in this case being the good, like the kingdom of heaven within this, but being a healthy state of being, a very positive, a very good, loving state of being. If you don't know yourself, then you exist in poverty, and you are that poverty. It just goes back to what I just said. You see all the things out there that are not good, that are not healthy, a world crashing and colliding, and people at war and hating, and you don't have to look very far to see that is incredibly prevalent. And when you participate in it, you are the poverty that is that poverty. And it's metaphoric. It's not poor. It's, I don't like it. It's poor for your spirit. It hurts who and what you are. But not until you realize that can you escape it. So if you do not come to know yourself, if you don't realize that you belong there, then you're just going to keep belonging there. All right, next verse. Jesus says, "The person old in his days will not hesitate to ask a child 7 days old about the place of life, and he will live. For many who are first will become last, and they will become a single one." Okay, here's one that I believe I understand partially, not completely. There's more research that has to be done. The person old in his days will not hesitate to ask a child 7 days old about the place of life. So here's what we know. First of all, numbers 3, 7, 40. These things appear hundreds of times in the Bible. You don't find 4 or 8, 41, 39. These numbers apparently represent something different. They're code for something. And in this case, as near as I can speculate, and from the work that I've done so far, if you look at a lot of other teachings, there appears to be 7 qualities, 7 characteristics of a human being that are desirable characteristics for enlightenment. And I'm not going to, I don't have that completely nailed down, so I don't want to say that this is what it means. I'm not going to make things up. I'll just let you know that, hey, help me out. Help me figure it out. But what we do know from other teachings from Jesus, that you're supposed to enter the kingdom of heaven within as a child. And we know that a child is still one. And I mean that they're not two. And I don't mean age-wise. What I mean is that they haven't become split. When you're new, when you're a child, when you're born, you could be in a nursery with 10 other children. Every one of you is a different nationality, different color, from parents with different beliefs, and you don't care. You play and you're happy, and you will play equally. Yeah, you might fight over toys or something. I don't mean that, but then when parents come in there and somebody brings a cake, all the kids are happy and they all love them. Nobody looks at them and says, "Oh, you're brown. I don't want that from you. Oh, you're black. Oh, you're ugly. Oh, you're fat. Oh, Those things are not a part of a child. Those are parts of adult. That is what happens when we start out one and we become two. What do we see here? A person old in days won't hesitate to ask a child 7 days with certain high quality characteristics that we all desire. And you will live if you follow that child. What we want to do is become like that child again. We want to take on those characteristics, which include, love and caring and non-judgment. And that's what that verse right there means. For many who are first will become last. Help me with that one too. And they will become a single one. A single one means becoming one again. What's the Bible verse when you make the two into one and say that to this mountain move, it will move? The child, enter like a child. All of these are hinting and nesting the idea that you need to become like the mind and the being of this young person again that doesn't have those judgmental characteristics. Then there'd be peace. Becoming one means that as you live your life, you're never having to say, "I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry," or "God, I hate those people. They suck," or a lot of issues that only a person that is on this search, that is really searching and continues to search, is going to open up and see that. Okay, next. Jesus says, "Come to know what is in front of you, and that which is hidden from you will become clear to you. For there is nothing hidden that will not become manifest." This one's an easy one to understand, maybe a difficult one to put into practice on your own. What is in front of you could also be called your fruits, the manifestation of your life. Like we talked about earlier, wherever you fit, whatever your environment is, if you're looking at something and you're living life and you're always angry and fighting, you belong there. But you don't know that. What is in front of you is showing you what is hidden. And what is hidden is you. And the reason it's hidden is because we don't look inward to see that we fit. We're looking outward and thinking that the reason we have to deal with those things is because the people are that way. But they're all thinking the same thing. And as long as nobody's awake or aware of that, then they just continue to live that way. If you want to see the kind of person you are, observe your environment, observe your relationships, observe what you do, observe your life on a daily basis, and realize that those things are happening and you are there because you belong there. You may not like it, but you can't change what is there. You have to change what is inside of you, and then you will cease to belong there. So yeah, to see what is in front of you, what is hidden from you will become clear to you. That's you. For there is nothing hidden that will not become manifest. That's another thing. You might have really severe issues. Maybe you were molested, raped. Maybe you just have incredible shame from things that you did voluntarily. And you grow up later and go, oh my God, I can never let anybody know this stuff. It's so horrible. It's horrific. I'm hiding it away. But there's nothing hidden that will not become manifest. So you hide that away, but what happens? It becomes manifest. It will surface in the way that you're holding it, the way you're hiding it. And it will show up. The more intensity you hold it with, the more intensity it shows up with. You know, one that always comes to mind for me is seeing ministers or, you know, particular one or two on TV in the past that have been, you know, holding the Bible and screaming and yelling and just, you know, anti-gay this and, you know, God hates fags and all that kind of stuff. And you look at them and go, you know what? That's you. That is, that's this right here. We're seeing the manifestation of what they have hidden. We're knowing them by their fruits. There's a number of different metaphors that cover this right here. You know, when people are very happily showing you what they like, they're showing you the good parts of their characteristics. And when they're telling you all the things they hate, they're showing you the walls and the barriers that they have up. And you can kind of tell because, you know, if you go to those sections in the Bible that they're using to judge, there might be a list of 10 different things that you're supposed to do or not do. Does anybody ever complain to you about eating shellfish? What about the one that says if you get married and you find out on your wedding night that your wife is not a virgin, you're supposed to take her to her father's doorstep and stone her to death? Does anybody ever complain that you're allowing crippled people to come to the altar and leave a gift? You know, all these verses coexist together. Which one are they hammering on? One of them. Anti-gay. Why do you suppose that is? That's what they fear. That is what they hide. And in the aggressive manner that they are discounting that, they're showing you exactly what they have. And, you know, that's the teaching. You tell them that, you won't be popular. You don't use this to judge other people, though. You just make a note of it. You use it to judge yourself. You look at it to say, oh my God, I'm the one that's hating. I'm the one that's doing this. And I can see that it's because of something that I am afraid of. But you got to have the courage to do that. This is not an easy thing. You can see why this teaching is nested in something that people will carry, because they're not going to pass along the other stuff. Yeah, there's a handful of people that'll go, oh my God, oh, this is it. Why didn't anybody tell us before? But most people will be saying, no, that's a bunch of crap, you know, and well, anyway, you get the idea. You understand how that one works? Yeah. Whatever happens manifests, comes from an energy. As within, so without. But it's not them. Yeah, it is. But it's you. That's your responsibility. You. If you do your job completely on the spiritual search, you really stop judging other people anyway. You recognize them and you understand where they're coming from, but you only fix yourself. And that is the only way to make the world a better place. Instead of fighting somebody for what you think they are or are not doing right, you take care of your own business and become the best possible that you can. And then you set an example and other people join you. Fighting them is joining them. This verse tells you that you can recognize that by simply observing what is happening around you and your life and understanding that you fit there because of who and what you are, because of what you have inside of you. Okay, next verses. This is a group here. Let me explain this one a little bit. In this next section, you can see there's a jump. There appears to be, as far as I can tell, some verses that are out of place. And when the interpretations were made of the Nag Hammadi from Coptic and whatever else languages they were written in, there was they just kept it. They maintained the order of it that way. In this case, we've got a verse that says his disciples questioned him and they said to him, do you want us to fast? And how should we pray and give alms, and what diet should we observe? Jesus doesn't answer those questions. He goes on to say some different things, but if you jump ahead a little ways, down to another section, and the way this particular interpretation has it numbered, this is section number 14, and that's where Jesus answers those questions. So what I'm going to do is just let you know that right now. I'm going to go up and ask that question, and then we're going to jump down to where Jesus's answers were and then come back. Otherwise, it'll sound a little goofy, as if that didn't already. Okay. And here it is. Yes, I'll repeat it. His disciples questioned him, and they said to him, "Do you want us to fast? And how should we pray and give alms? And what diet should we observe?" Then we jump all the way down here. If you have a copy on your own, it'll be like on the next page and a half or 2 pages later. Jesus said to them, "If you fast, you will bring forth sin for yourselves. And if you pray, you will be condemned. And if you give alms, you will do harm to your spirits. And if you go into any land and wander from place to place, and if they take you in, then eat what they will set before you and heal the sick among them." And he caps that off by saying, "For what goes into your mouth will not defile you. Rather, what comes out of your mouth will defile you." Okay, so that sounds kind of weird, isn't it? First off, if you fast, you will bring forth sin for yourselves. Boy, you read that literally, and it sounds like if you don't eat for a time frame, for whatever reason, for health or spiritual reasons, it's going to bring forth sin. That's why we turn it inward. If you fast, fasting in the spiritual world is not neglecting your food or your water. It is not taking things into your mind. Fasting in the spiritual sense would be meditation or getting away from things, finding somewhere where you can get mental clarity. Go overlooking a river someplace, or somewhere where you can get to a point where your mind isn't racing. Sometimes you go out into the wilderness somewhere, or the desert, and for hours or even days, your mind is still frazzled with all the things that are a part of your life. So even then, it's not fasting. Fasting is really getting your mind to a point to where it's not taking things in. It's not processing. It's not continually thinking about stuff. So fasting is looking for a place of clarity. You will bring forth sin if you do that. Sin in this case is a term that we need to use to identify the things that we hold inside of us, that are those things, the characteristics that prevent us from being that child again. The judgments, the hatred, whatever they are, the things that we look at other people with in a derogatory way, that we don't have love surrounding them. If you fast, you will bring forth sin. That's a good thing. The sin is up here, the fasting is up here. That's exactly what you want to do. If you fast, you will bring forth sin for yourselves. Perfect. And if you pray, you will be condemned. Praying is what? What do we know praying to be? Praying is asking for something. It's wanting something. We might today look at something called visualization, where you hold an image of what you have. We've all seen the videos, and boy, this is a very big thing. Right now, there's big business out there on just that aspect alone. You know, they let all the other spiritual stuff go, but if you spend time visualizing that bag of money dropping on your head, here it comes, be ready for it. That's not what we're looking for right here. And even though that's a minor part of it, it really falls short. That's it's a very attractive, appealing thing to people who aren't on a spiritual search, but just want to have like a wealthy, happy life. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's going to come with limitations. It's not a very complete process. However, we know from current brain research, if you're mentally holding images, if you're praying consistently, if you've got a mental process, you know what? That's feeding yourself. You're actually wiring neural pathways. You are becoming more and more in line with what you want by continually doing that. You don't just pray one time or visualize one time. It's an ongoing process. And the reason that is because, it wires your brain. When you focus on something long with intensity, pretty soon when you're not paying attention, that's what's happening in the background. If you do it once or twice but you're focused on other things you don't like, what do you catch yourself thinking about throughout the daytime is the big things. You need to focus on what you want, but also eliminate from your life the things that are in the way of that. So praying is essentially wanting something. Let's be careful about that term, though. What you're wanting is in compliance with all of the rest of the teachings. So you're not saying, I want that person's spouse or something like that. You don't get to ask for other people or other minds or other things like that. This is really about your own life. I want peace. I want happiness. I want joy. I want to have experiences that are just very good and positive. Those are the things that you easily get if you take the rest of the training and all of the other lessons and apply them all. Prayer is putting forth the mental energy necessary to have those things manifest. You're desiring them, your brain is working, the cosmos around you is functioning. Take that for what you want. I know it works for me. I think it works for everybody, that a lot of things that we want happen, although there's a lot of things that happen that we don't want, because we're a mixed bag. We really haven't found this place of purity. Prayer is that. It's establishing in your mind with clarity what you want, while simultaneously assuring that you're still operating in compliance with the rest of the spiritual teaching. Being condemned is not from other people. Again, this is an internal spiritual part. When you look for those things, you're going to find that you have belief systems that I would classify as failure mechanisms. There are things that get in your own way that you don't realize they're getting in your way, but you carry them inside, and they are mental convictions, beliefs, fears, shames, anything that gets in the way of your success. Your failure mechanisms are what you carry with you. Condemnation is seeing those, finding those, dealing with those. You're condemning yourself. And I don't mean, and this doesn't mean condemn yourself to the end of time or, that's it. You've lost. You hold these things. The condemnation here is really just seeing that I want this and I want that. However, something keeps coming up that gets in the way, and I'm beginning to observe this repetitive nature of something. That is what this verse is about. When you pray, when you want something, you will begin to see your failure mechanisms, what gets in your own way, provided you're doing all the other parts. You have to be looking at yourself. You have to be realizing that the output and the manifested things that are happening in your life are coming from you as well. It's a very self-observing process right here. That's that one. Okay, and the next one, he is responding to their question about whether or not they should give alms. And he says, if you do give alms, you will do harm to your spirits. Giving alms is giving money, giving charity, giving things to the needy. And that won't do harm to your spirits. And in this case, if we look at it inwards, giving yourself alms, of course, you have to take care of yourself. But the idea, if you look at Jesus, he really lived like a mendicant monk. And I don't know that we need to exactly live this right here. I think that with variation here, what he's talking about is the idea of giving things to yourself, buying things for yourself that are not necessary. Maybe you just feel like, I feel bad, I need a reward. I'm going to go buy a donut. No big deal. I'm going to go buy a new phone. Ooh, starting to get up there. I need a new car. Ooh, wait a minute. If you need a new car and you buy a car that's a utilitarian thing, fine. If you're worshiping your car and you're buying something that's really expensive and meanwhile your neighbor's hungry, that's doing harm to your spirit. It's not doing you any good. This one I'm going to kind of set off to the side. I'm going to throw that out there as an answer, but the alms is a charity thing. I think what you're not supposed to do is waste things on yourself, buying yourself all kinds of things that are unnecessary, but they're something that just make you feel better. If that's what you need to do to feel better, you got problems anyway. So that one's that. The next verse, and if you go into any land and wander from place to place, and if they take you in, then eat what they will set before you. That's when they asked him, what shall we eat? And they're Jewish. They're Jewish people living in this culture where there's kosher food laws. And in this case, I think that this is not an internal one. I think this might be one of those where I can really see this being just one of the rules for the community, how to conduct yourself in your community, in your world, in your life. And what he's telling them is, if you're going around and meeting people and they're saying, come on in, we've got some shellfish for you and some things that are not kosher, this is what we have to eat. You should just politely eat that and forget about the Jewish kosher food laws. That wasn't important. Heal the sick among them. We're going to have to get to healing later. But from a physical standpoint, I don't believe anybody is putting hands on anybody and healing leprosy and healing blindness and things like that. Healing people that are sick and helping people that are blind to see is teaching them this. When you see, that means you understand. Basically, be gracious, eat what they serve you, teach them. And then the last verse, for what goes into your mouth will not defile you. Rather, what comes out of your mouth will defile you. He's telling them that what the Jews said as far as pleasing God by eating certain things is throw it out the window. It doesn't matter what you eat. It matters what you say. What comes out of your mouth is what makes you what you are, not what goes into your mouth. That's simple. Okay, just before that last group, I had jumped from where the disciples asked the questions and went down to where Jesus answered them. So we skipped a big chunk. We're going to go back and pick that up now. So starting right after the disciples questioned him and asked him what they should eat and whether to fast and all of that stuff, we get into, this one is a very strange one sounding right up front. And I'll tell you that nothing else that I've read from Jesus, and yeah, that's a pretty small combination of things. Nothing else quite uses this sort of verbiage. Jesus doesn't really refer to lions. However, the verse decodes and it fits, but again, the obscurity is quite a bit there. So I'm gonna use the process to decode this one, and I'm gonna ask everyone to keep an open mind and observe whether or not you think it's true or not. You know, at some point in time, I want to say what I think is very important is that I theorize this and I have this belief, but I also don't think that I have all of the answers. I think that I'm really far along on a path of understanding this. It makes sense to me. But I also know that I'm going to be in a small group of people. You know, if I talk to Christians about this, they'll tell me I'm wrong, that is not what the Bible says. And if I talk to an atheist about what I think the Bible says, and their idea is the Bible is completely crap, you know, it's just a mythological story that should be discarded. I'm not in either camp. I get in everybody's crosshairs, and I realize that. And having said that, I encourage people to consider the tools, consider the keys, consider this process, see if it makes sense to you. If you have experience or exposure to kind of spiritual teachings, Buddha type teachings, then it'll make sense to you. If not, you might just think, wow, this guy's really whacked out. And that's okay. I don't mind. This verse is definitely one of those where I think I have a good idea, but I'm not 100% confident with it. Okay, Jesus says, "Blessed is the lion that a person will eat, and the lion will become human. And anathema is the person whom a lion will eat, and the lion will become human." This one can be a little tough to look at, and I'm going to lay it out in a different way, and I'm going to change a little bit of verbiage here. The lion in their culture was something that the Romans had that would eat people. Christians are fond of saying, you know, thousands, millions, whatever. There was probably a handful. There weren't even thousands of Christians at that time. There weren't a lot of Christians until the Romans became Christians. So I have no doubt that the Romans fed some Christians to the lions for sport, along with criminals, along with all kinds of other people, but I don't believe they singled them out. That's kind of a Hollywood thing right there. But regardless, that's where this link would come in. The lion is a bad thing. The person is a good thing. I'm going to reword these and lay these out here. Go ahead and look at this. First verse, "Blessed is the lion that a person will eat, and the lion will become human." Let's change that to, "Blessed is the bad that a person will eat, and the bad will become human." You can see I changed the word from lion to bad right there. Then on the next one, "An anathema is the person whom a lion will eat, and the lion will become human." Let's change that one to just try to look at it with different verbiage here. "And hated is the person whom the bad will eat, and the bad will become human." We can start looking at this and turning it inward and saying, you know, the bad, the lion, the bad, the stuff inside of me as I grow up that has become the things that make me a bad person. I am blessed if I consume that, if I eat that, and that bad becomes human. it fits in with the idea that we're healing ourselves, that we're getting rid of the things inside of us. In this case, the verbiage is just strangely in this way that you eat, you consume in you what is bad. And in doing so, it's no longer there and you become more human, so you're blessed. In the next one, and hated is the person whom the bad will eat and the bad will become human. In this case, what we're looking at is the idea that you will become a hated person if the things inside of you that are bad consume you, and the bad becomes human in that way. Now, instead of you eating the bad and getting rid of it, the bad ate you and got rid of you. Makes sense? Again, have fun with that one. I'm going to throw that out there, but set it off to the side. I also want to say, I know we all struggle with this verbiage. There are people that will say there is no such thing as bad and good. It all depends on how you perceive it. When I use terms like that, please be open-minded. Please feel free to plug in your own. I don't mean necessarily bad, that you become a bad person like you're a thief and a criminal and that sort of stuff. I mean bad in the spiritual pure sense is not liking people because they are a certain race or because they are a certain sexual orientation or a different religion or something like that. That's not pure. Pure is pure. Anything other than that is not pure. When I use the term bad, that's a very poor term to use. So please use your imagination and just, change it to derogatory internal concepts or baggage or weeds, monsters, creatures, perceptions, all of the above and then some. Okay, next one. And he says, the human being is like a sensible fisherman who cast his net into the sea and drew it up from the sea filled with little fish. Among them, the sensible fisherman found a large, fine fish. He threw all the little fish back into the sea, and he chose the large fish effortlessly. Whoever has ears to hear should hear. All right, this is a fun one, and I think it's pretty simple, especially compared to that last one about the lion. Jesus taught the same lessons over and over again to different people, and this fisherman's story has parallels to shepherds and, the one big sheep and different things like that. We're going to see that unfold as I continue to go along. In this case, what we know from the spiritual journey is how important it is to have simplicity in one's life and how to hold on to one thing mentally that is very important, that is critical, that is key. You pull out the net is what you cast into life, the sea. What you gather up from your life is metaphorically casting your net into the sea. And when you pull it back, you've got a myriad of things, all kinds of little stuff. Most of it's like the little fish are inedible or not worth very much. In life, we're probably doing a lot of things that really don't serve us any purpose, just little stuff here and there. I've heard people before bragging about how many things they could have going on at one time, having that capacity to multitask. And that's a very Western sort of a thing. How many things can I do at once and be proud of it? Go for it if that's what you want. But from a spiritual perspective, you need to slow down. You need to let go of all the things that are unnecessary and focus on the one big thing. And the one big thing, presumably, if you're on this path, is your own spiritual purity. So you're trying to get rid of all of the other things and just hold on to one big thing. And when he says, whoever has ears to hear should hear, those are always just clues for figure this out. It's not about fish and nets. It's about something different. Why would you tell somebody to just keep the big fish and throw the little fish away and then tell them to figure out what I'm trying to tell you unless you had something nested in there. And certainly that's the case here. The lesson in this one is keep life simple. Get rid of all of the things that are unnecessary because they're taking up time, they're consuming space in your brain, which is not available for other things. And the one or two things that are probably really high quality that you should be accomplishing, influencing your children or something like that, is being decayed because you've got too many irons in the fire. That's it. Okay, I'm going to bring this video to a close, and I'm going to continue on, but this one's gone into an hour. You can easily see that as you talk through this stuff. I'm kind of excited about it. I like it. I think this is the fun part of puzzle solving, perhaps, in those verses. And this would run in very long. I'm going to make a multitude of videos. I'll just step into part 2, part 3, whatever it takes, make them all about an hour long, and continue to decode these as best I can and let you know that I'm interested in what you feel about it. If you have any comments or additions or things like that, please feel free to list them. But I'm going to let you know right now, you can tell by what I've done already, I don't do supernatural. These have to have some kind of valid meaning. If it's something that is out there that you have to have faith in, and this means something that if you can't show me or somebody else what you mean, it's just theoretical, then you might as well go sit in the pew. I don't care what you're trying to figure out. I don't do that. I don't do supernatural. There are things that happen that are strange. Times people read minds accidentally or things like that. Just my wife and I sometimes we will just say the same thing at the same time, and it didn't used to be that way. You can see at some point that there's this kind of a connection that's being made on a mental, spatial level that is real. And I don't think that's supernatural. I think that's natural. Maybe we don't see how it works, can't measure it, can't put a scope on it, but we're kind of going that direction. I'm not going to take something like that and say spirits or magic or cosmos. I'm not. That's supernatural, and I don't go look for the supernatural to answer my spiritual questions. Those are things you can't do anything about. I only am interested in things that I have control over. So as you're dealing with this, if you choose to, and you want to leave comments below, please bear that in mind. I don't care about Sophia and chosen ones and God and the reality of spirits afterwards and good gods and bad gods. No, I don't care about that. Okay, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I hope it's been fun and interesting for you. And I'll keep working on the next one. Have less introduction on it. I think it can just go from video to video and flow a little bit better. There is just one truth, and I believe we're getting to it.